Imagine waking up one morning to the roar of 200 stealth fighters cutting across your skies, each armed to the teeth and cloaked by electronic warfare. That's exactly what happened on June 13th, 2025, when Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a breathtaking show of air power that struck more than 100 strategic targets deep inside Iran. In mere hours, nuclear facilities once thought beyond reach lay crippled, missile factories went up in smoke, and high-ranking commanders found themselves in the crosshairs of a preemptive strike unlike anything the region has seen in decades. This wasn't a small skirmish. It was a declaration that Israel is willing to upend the status quo before its adversaries can turn ambition into weapons of mass destruction. By the time the dust settled, questions flooded in. How did Israel pull off such a far-reaching operation without crippling diplomatic fallout? Who stood behind the scenes, granting overflight permissions and sharing real-time intelligence? And perhaps most importantly, how will Iran respond? In the coming minutes, we'll peel back the layers of this bold attack, tracing its planning and execution, uncovering the outside actors who made it possible, and forecasting Tehran's next moves, both overt and through proxy militias. But the story doesn't end there. We'll dive into a side-by-side assessment of military might, weighing Israel's cutting-edge F-35s and missile shield networks against Iran's vast ballistic missile arsenal and shadowy drone fleets. We'll map out the global chessboard too, identifying which world powers and regional players are lining up behind Tel Aviv or Tehran, and what a broader conflict could mean for oil prices, global security, and the fragile fabric of Middle East diplomacy. So buckle up. In just a few minutes, you'll have a clear, comprehensive picture of who really holds the advantage and what may come next in this titanic clash between Israel and Iran. Iran's nuclear program stretches back to the 1950s under the U.S. Atoms for Peace initiative. But only in the early 2000s did Western intelligence begin to suspect Tehran was pursuing weapons-grade enrichment. Over the next decade, Iran built its uranium enrichment centrifuge facilities at Natanz and Fordow, ostensibly for civilian energy needs, but undeniably capable of producing fissile material for a bomb. In 2015, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, appeared to curb that ambition. Iran agreed to limit its uranium stockpile, reduce its active centrifuges, and open its sites to rigorous inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. Yet when the Trump administration pulled the U.S. out of the deal in May 2018 and reimposed crushing sanctions, Tehran began to exceed its enrichment limits, reducing the breakout time for a bomb from over a year to just months. Parallel to the nuclear saga, a covert war simmered across the region. Since 2018, a series of mysterious explosions and cyber-sabotage campaigns have struck Iran's nuclear facilities, missile depots, and even cargo ships linked to the Revolutionary Guard. Iranian officials have blamed Israel's Mossad for hacking Natanz's centrifuge controls and bombing an underground missile complex at Kojir, while Western experts point to a cyber weapon known as Olympic Destroyer. At the same time, Israel has carried out dozens of airstrikes inside Syria, where Iran established forward bases to deploy Hezbollah and other Shiite militias, destroying weapons convoys and security installations. These shadow operations have grown in tempo and boldness, setting a precedent for direct action inside Iranian borders. Beyond nuclear and covert dimensions, geopolitical frictions have only intensified since 2018. Iran's deployment of proxy forces in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, combined with its ballistic missile launches over the Persian Gulf and repeated drone overflights of U.S. naval vessels, provoked periodic clashes with American and Allied forces. Meanwhile, Gulf Arab states normalized relations with Israel under the Abraham Accords, forging a tacit security alliance aimed squarely at curbing Tehran's regional influence. Economically strangled and diplomatically isolated, Iran responded with a maximum resistance strategy, accelerating missile tests, unveiling new drone platforms, and conducting unprecedented naval maneuvers in the Strait of Hormuz. By June 2025, Tehran was once again on the cusp of a nuclear threshold and flexing its regional muscle at every turn. Its leaders repeatedly warned that any strike on Iranian soil would provoke a regional inferno. But Israel's strategic calculus, fear that diplomatic pressure and covert action were no longer enough, ultimately tipped the scales toward an outright preemptive assault. That dramatic shift from shadow war to open conflict marks a watershed moment in Middle Eastern history, and it sets the stage for an escalation whose consequences extend far beyond the deserts of central Iran. On the morning of June 13th, 2025, Israel executed what it dubbed Operation Rising Lion, a meticulously planned air campaign designed to deliver a decisive blow to Iran's nuclear and missile infrastructure. At approximately 0300 local time, over 200 combat aircraft, primarily F-35, EI-Adirs, F-15Is, and F-16Is, rose from multiple air bases across southern Israel, refueled mid-air by KC-707 tankers, and slipped undetected beneath Iran's radar coverage thanks to advanced electronic warfare pods and decoy drones. Over a flight path stretching more than 1,000 miles round trip, strike packages flew northward through Jordanian airspace, then skirted Iraqi and Saudi territory under temporary overflight agreements brokered at the 11th hour by Washington and Riyadh. By 0430, the first wave of bombs and precision missiles were impacting targets deep inside Iran, setting the stage for a brief but furious aerial assault. Israel's targeting list reflected years of intelligence collection and covert reconnaissance. The first strikes focused on the uranium enrichment site at Natanz, where bunker-busting GBU-39 small-diameter bombs disabled key centrifuge halls and collapsed tunnels. Simultaneously, AGM-158 JASSM cruise missiles struck the under-construction heavy water reactor near Kandab, while electro-optical guided munitions took out missile assembly facilities at Shahed Industrial Group. High-value leadership targets were not overlooked. Senior Revolutionary Guard commanders' seaside villas near Bandar Abbas and Kishim Island were blasted by satellite-guided bombs, and a precision helicopter raid carried out by a small team of Sayeret Matkal operators neutralized an off-grid radar station suspected of tracking Israeli aircraft. In less than 2 hours, more than 100 distinct military and nuclear sites were knocked offline, leaving Iran's strategic deterrent in disarray. Throughout the assault, Israel relied heavily on real-time intelligence and electronic warfare assistance from the United States. American signals intelligence platforms monitored Revolutionary Guard communications, feeding actionable updates to Israeli commanders via secure data links. U.S. Navy Aegis cruisers in the northern Arabian Sea provided ballistic missile early warning, while E-3 Sentry AWACS aircraft helped deconflict multiple flight corridors. In return, Israel offered to share battle damage assessments and target re-engagement recommendations. an intelligence exchange that deepened operational transparency and minimized the risk of mission creep or unintended escalation. Rumors also swirl of covert support from Gulf Arab partners. Emirati drones relayed electronic countermeasure patterns, and Saudi-controlled airspace allowed for a lower altitude ingress that bypassed Iranian S-300 batteries. By dawn, Operation Rising Lion had achieved its primary objectives. Iran's breakout clock for a nuclear weapon was set back by at least 2 years. Its missile production pipeline was crippled, and its senior leadership was sent a stark message that no location is beyond Israel's reach. Yet the complexity of the mission carried inherent risks. The multinational overflight arrangements required flawless diplomatic coordination. Had Jordanians or Saudis withdrawn permission mid-mission, strike packages would have faced lethal engagement by Syrian or Iranian air defenses. Likewise, Iran's layered network of SA-20 and S-300 batteries forced Israeli pilots to precisely time their approach corridors and to rely on stand-in decoys to draw out surface-to-air missiles before the main force arrived. Ultimately, Israel's superior electronic warfare and stealth capabilities prevailed, but the margin for error was razor-thin. In the aftermath, President Netanyahu declared that Israel acted with iron resolve to extinguish the greatest existential threat we face, while Iran's leadership radioed vows of harsh retaliation amid nationwide mourning. Global markets reacted within hours. Oil prices spiked, stock indexes wavered, and airlines rerouted flights around Iranian airspace. Even as the world took stock, intel analysts were poring over satellite imagery and SIGINT intercepts, trying to discern which damaged facilities could be repaired and how quickly Tehran could reconstitute its deterrence. What began as a lightning-fast demonstration of air superiority has now set the clock ticking on the next phase of this titanic confrontation, one in which every drone launched, missile fired, or proxy militia mobilized could upend the fragile calculus of Middle East security. The immediate aftermath of Israel's Operation Rising Lion sent political shockwaves across the globe. Inside Iran, the government convened an emergency session of the Supreme National Security Council, with Ayatollah Ali Khamenei declaring that the Zionist regime has crossed a red line and will face divine vengeance. Massive protests erupted across Tehran, Mashhad, and Esfahan, where state-backed rallies called for a global uprising against Israel and its Western allies. Within hours, Iran launched a limited missile barrage targeting Israeli military positions in the Golan Heights and activated proxy groups in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq, signaling the opening salvos of a broader regional retaliation strategy. Hezbollah, Tehran's most powerful proxy, issued a statement vowing imminent and proportionate response, while rocket fire from southern Lebanon intensified along Israel's northern border. In Iraq, the Iran-aligned Kata'ib Hezbollah militia attacked U.S. bases near al-Assad and Erbil, prompting the Pentagon to raise its threat level across the Middle East. Meanwhile, in Yemen, the Houthis claimed to have launched cruise missiles at Israeli targets in Eilat, a claim Tel Aviv dismissed but monitored closely. Iran's goal was clear: avoid direct full-scale war while using asymmetrical pressure to make Israel and its allies bleed slowly. Globally, reactions were mixed. The U.S. State Department issued a carefully worded statement acknowledging Israel's right to defend itself while urging immediate de-escalation. Russia condemned the strike as a reckless act of aggression, while China called for an emergency UN Security Council session. The European Union remained divided. France warned of irreversible consequences, while Germany tacitly backed Israel's right to neutralize threats. In the Arab world, Gulf states like the UAE and Saudi Arabia remained publicly silent, though leaked diplomatic cables suggested quiet relief at Iran's nuclear setback. This early diplomatic balancing act suggests that while condemnation may be loud, active support for Iran's retaliation could remain limited, at least in the near term. Iran's next moves following Israel's strike are being calculated with equal parts fury and caution. Though the regime's initial rhetoric promised swift retaliation, its deeper strategy appears to favor a calibrated, multi-front escalation designed to avoid direct state-on-state warfare while maximizing regional instability. Analysts believe Iran's military command will lean heavily on its asymmetric warfare doctrine, activating proxy groups, leveraging cyber capabilities, and executing high-impact, deniable attacks across the Middle East and beyond. This approach allows Iran to respond forcefully without exposing itself to another round of direct Israeli or U.S. strikes. Already, signs of this strategy are emerging. Hezbollah has reportedly received go orders for a sustained campaign along the Israel-Lebanon border, combining rocket fire with small unit infiltration attempts. Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria have intensified attacks on U.S. assets and logistical convoys, aiming to push American forces into a reactive posture. Tehran is also expected to step up naval harassment in the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point through which 1/5 of the world's oil supply flows, threatening global energy markets as leverage. These moves serve a dual purpose, creating military pressure while signaling to the international community that any further Israeli escalation risks dragging the region into an uncontrollable spiral. On the cyber front, Iran's elite hacker unit, APT-34, also known as Oil Rig, is believed to be preparing retaliatory campaigns against Israeli infrastructure. Cybersecurity firms have reported increased probing activity targeting Israeli energy grids, airport systems, and financial institutions. These attacks are difficult to trace conclusively, but could sow economic disruption and psychological pressure without the risks of physical retaliation. Additionally, intelligence services anticipate potential Iranian covert operations in third-party countries, targeting Israeli diplomats or interests abroad in a bid to raise the costs of the strike without triggering full-scale war. Yet Iran faces serious constraints. Its economy remains hobbled by sanctions. Its air defenses were humiliated during the Israeli raid, and its domestic population, already weary of inflation and repression, may not support prolonged war. Tehran must therefore strike a balance, retaliate enough to restore credibility and deter future attacks, but not so forcefully as to invite regime-threatening consequences. Israel, for its part, remains on high alert, prepared for a protracted period of tension marked by shadow conflict, but wary of pushing too far too fast. As both sides weigh their options, the real danger lies in miscalculation, where one proxy rocket, drone strike, or cyber attack crosses an invisible red line, triggering the very regional war both powers claim they want to avoid. The balance of power between Israel and Iran is shaped by vastly different military doctrines, geographic vulnerabilities, and the quality of alliances. On paper, Israel possesses technological superiority, a more modern air force, and one of the most sophisticated missile defense architectures in the world. However, Iran's asymmetric strategy, vast proxy network, and geographic reach complicate any straightforward assessment of dominance. If a broader conflict were to erupt, both countries would have distinct advantages and critical weaknesses that would define the course of the war. Israel's conventional military capabilities are formidable. Its air force, widely regarded as the best in the region, boasts a fleet of over 300 combat aircraft, including approximately 50 F-35 Ayadir stealth fighters, customized with Israeli avionics and software. Its long-range strike ability is unmatched in the Middle East, as demonstrated in the recent attack, and supported by advanced drone fleets, satellite surveillance, and electronic warfare systems. Israel also fields an extensive multi-tiered missile defense network composed of Iron Dome for short-range threats, David Sling for medium range, and the Arrow 3 system for long-range ballistic missiles. These layers allow it to intercept the majority of rockets and missiles launched by both conventional forces and proxies. Iran, by contrast, operates under a doctrine of strategic depth and attrition. Its air force is outdated, mostly consisting of Cold War-era jets, but it compensates with a growing arsenal of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and increasingly advanced UAVs. The Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force coordinates proxy operations across Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen, giving Iran the capacity to launch attacks on Israeli interests from multiple fronts. In a protracted war, Tehran's strategy would likely focus on overwhelming Israel's defenses through volume and geographic dispersion rather than surgical strikes. One of Israel's biggest advantages lies in its Western alliances. The United States remains its most committed supporter, providing nearly $3.8 billion in annual military aid and sharing cutting-edge technologies and intelligence. European countries, while more restrained, often provide diplomatic backing. Even some Sunni Arab states, particularly Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Bahrain, share a common interest in countering Iran's regional ambitions, even if their support is unofficial. These relationships allow Israel to operate with confidence, knowing that both military resupply and political cover are likely in the event of a sustained conflict. Iran, on the other hand, counts fewer but still significant allies. Chief among them is Hezbollah, widely seen as the most powerful non-state military force in the world, with an arsenal of 150,000-plus rockets and advanced anti-air systems. Iran also enjoys close ties with Syria's Assad regime and various Shiite militias in Iraq. Internationally, Tehran can rely on Russia and China for diplomatic shielding in the UN Security Council, and both nations have conducted joint military exercises with Iran in recent years. However, neither Moscow nor Beijing appears eager to intervene directly in a war that could destabilize global energy markets and trigger further US involvement. Geography also plays a crucial role. Iran's vast size and mountainous terrain make it harder to conquer or neutralize quickly, while Israel's small land area makes it uniquely vulnerable to missile saturation. A single barrage overwhelming Iron Dome in cities like Tel Aviv or Haifa could be devastating, both materially and psychologically. Conversely, Iran's economy is already under heavy strain, and sustained bombing of critical infrastructure, particularly oil refineries and power plants, could push the country toward collapse. In the end, while Israel has the edge in precision, technology, and global support, Iran's depth, unconventional assets, and regional footprint ensure that any war would be neither easy nor short. The likely scenario isn't a decisive victory for either side, but a grinding, multi-front conflict that draws in proxies, cripples economies, and destabilizes the broader Middle East. Both sides know this, which is why, despite the fury of the moment, their next moves may focus more on deterrence and damage control than immediate escalation. In any widening conflict between Israel and Iran, the alliances they each command will shape both strategy and outcomes. Israel's most steadfast patron is the United States, whose annual $3.8 billion military aid package guarantees a steady flow of advanced weapons, munitions, and real-time intelligence support. U.S. naval and air assets in the region bolster Israel's early warning posture and offer a powerful deterrent against direct Iranian retaliation. Beyond Washington, key NATO partners, particularly the United Kingdom and France, have quietly reinforced Israel's air defenses and shared satellite imagery, while European diplomatic backing, even when muted, helps blunt calls for sanctions or UN resolutions against Jerusalem. Meanwhile, the Abraham Accords have drawn Gulf Arab states such as the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and, increasingly, Saudi Arabia into a covert security cooperation framework with Israel. Though these states stop short of public military intervention, they provide critical overflight corridors, electronic warfare data, and logistical support that expand Israel's operational reach. Conversely, Iran's core alliance is built on ideological and transactional grounds. The Lebanese Hezbollah militia serves as Tehran's most formidable non-state partner, fielding an arsenal of over 150,000 rockets and advanced anti-tank and air defense systems. In Iraq and Syria, Iran's Quds Force exerts influence over a network of Shiite militias, such as Kata'ib Hezbollah and Harakat al-Nujaba, that can open additional fronts against Israeli or U.S. forces. In Yemen, the Houthi rebels have demonstrated their ability to strike Red Sea shipping lanes and potentially Israeli ports with cruise missiles and drones. On the global stage, Iran leans on diplomatic cover from Russia and China, both of which have veto power in the UN Security Council and share strategic interests in countering American influence. However, neither Moscow nor Beijing appears inclined to provide direct military assistance, wary of provoking further instability in the oil-rich Gulf region. Beyond these blocs, a spectrum of adversaries and fence-sitters could influence the balance. Turkey, while a NATO member, has edged closer to Tehran in recent years, but remains cautious about fully confronting Israel. European public opinion generally sympathizes with civilian suffering on both sides, pressuring capitals to mediate rather than arm. In sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia, pragmatic states, dependent on either U.S. or Iranian energy supplies, are likely to stay neutral or hedge their positions. Ultimately, Israel can count on deep-pocketed Western backing and burgeoning Gulf ties, while Iran's strength lies in its regional proxies and diplomatic alliances, though it lacks the overt military guarantees that Israel enjoys. When comparing Israel and Iran's military capabilities, several domains stand out: manpower, air power, missile defense, and emerging cyberspace assets. In terms of active personnel, Iran boasts roughly 523,000 in its regular military, including the Artesh, Army, Navy, Air Force, and the Revolutionary Guard Corps, and can mobilize over 3 million reservists and Basij militia members in a total war scenario. Israel's defense forces, by contrast, maintain about 176,500 active troops with mandatory conscription, ensuring a large trained reserve of some 445,000. Although Iran holds the numerical edge on paper, Israel's all-volunteer professional corps and advanced training regimens yield a qualitatively superior force that prioritizes rapid mobilization, combined arms tactics, and integrated air-ground operations. In the skies, Israel enjoys clear superiority. Its Air Force fields over 300 combat aircraft, including 50 F-35E Adir 5th-generation stealth fighters, around 75 F-15I and 60 F-16I strike platforms, and a growing fleet of reconnaissance and combat drones. By contrast, Iran's air inventory largely consists of aging US-made F-4 and F-14 fighters, many grounded for lack of parts, plus a handful of MiG-29s and Su-24s acquired from Russia. Tehran has sought to modernize with indigenously produced UAVs, such as the Shahed series, and limited purchases of Su-35s, but these remain a fraction of Israel's force. Israel's decisive edge in stealth, avionics, and precision guidance munitions underpins its ability to strike deep with minimal warning. Missile defense is another asymmetric advantage. Israel's multi-layered architecture, Iron Dome for short-range rockets, David's Sling for medium-range threats, and Arrow 2-3 for ballistic missiles, intercepts an estimated 90 to 95% of incoming projectiles. Iran relies primarily on Russian-made S-300 and growing S-400 batteries to protect key installations, but lacks a robust counter-rocket system to shield civilian areas from massed drone or missile barrages. Iran's strength lies instead in quantity. An estimated 70,000 to 80,000 short and medium-range ballistic missiles capable of reaching across the region, plus cruise missiles and smart munitions that can swarm defenses. Beyond kinetic forces, both countries have developed cyber and space capabilities. Israel's Unit 8200 is reputed to be one of the world's premier signals intelligence and cyber warfare units, having pioneered offensive operations like the Stuxnet-like sabotage of Iranian centrifuges. Iran has forged its own cyber arm under the IRGC, responsible for high-profile attacks on Gulf state infrastructure and probing critical systems in Israel. In space, Israel operates multiple reconnaissance and communications satellites, whereas Iran's fledgling space program has launched small domestic satellites but lacks the constellation depth to provide real-time battlefield imagery. Overall, Israel's qualitative superiority in technology, training, and defense systems gives it a clear edge in a conventional clash, while Iran's numerical depth in rockets, proxies, and manpower provides asymmetric avenues to offset that imbalance. In a protracted conflict, both sides would exploit their unique strengths. Israel with precision and rapid response, Iran through attrition, dispersed attacks, and strategic depth. Operation Rising Lion has underscored the lengths to which Israel will go to neutralize existential threats, leveraging cutting-edge air power, stealth technology, and deep intelligence partnerships to strike at the heart of Iran's nuclear and missile programs. Yet Iran's asymmetric toolkit, from its vast proxy network to its missile arsenals and cyber capabilities, ensures that any broader conflict will be complex, multi-front, and protracted rather than swiftly decisive. The balance of power remains delicate. Israel's qualitative edge in technology and alliances is matched by Iran's quantitative depth and regional reach. As tensions simmer and retaliation risks spiraling out of control, the world watches anxiously. Will deterrence hold, or will a single miscalculation ignite a full-scale war that redraws the map of the Middle East? Now that you've seen the strategic stakes laid bare, we want to hear from you. Drop your analysis in the comments. Do you believe Israel can sustain its edge, or will Iran's depth ultimately prevail? And if you found this breakdown valuable, hit that like button, subscribe to InfoWorld for more in-depth geopolitical insights, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a critical update. Your support helps us keep bringing you timely, expertly researched coverage of the world's most consequential events.